all of the research conducted on UV light has been done with UV light in isolation and not in the context of full spectrum sunlight. So even midsummer, midday sun is only less than 10% UV light. Over 50% of that light is red and infrared light. And there's also research in the literature showing that red and infrared light balance out the effects of UV light on the body and help to basically reduce things like DNA damage and inflammation at the level of the skin. So if we know this to be true, why are we studying UV light in isolation when we know that's not the context that anybody is experiencing UV light outside of, sparse like tanning bed use, for example, which may also have its place in certain ways, but I think the vast majority of people are encountering UV light in the context of the sun, and so we need to study UV light in that context because that's going to give us real world information and data about the potential benefits and risks of being in the sun, because every decision and choice and behavior that we make has a risk benefit analysis associated with it. And that's another thing that it gets like on my nerves with regards to like the standard medical model and mainstream science as well, is that, they'll say the sun causes skin cancer, stay out of it. But what they don't tell you is that, if we look at the risk and the benefit of the sun, that I actually just made a post on this yesterday, that sun exposure will increase your risk of cancers that have less than a 0.3% mortality rate. And it will decrease your risk of getting cancers that kill upwards of 65% of the people who get it. So basically your basal cell and your squamous cell carcinomas there is an increased risk of getting those from being in the sun. Though I would argue that if you're building a healthy solar callus and living your life in a way that's more congruent with nature, that you can also avoid those pretty easily. And then the cancers that you can actually avoid by getting sufficient sunlight are going to be your colon, your breasts, and your blood cancers, which account for a very high mortality rate sector of cancer deaths. And that's not even to mention all of the cardiovascular disease and diabetes that can be avoided by getting adequate sun exposure as well. And so we think about it in that context. We look at all the top killers in the United States would be a lot of these are driven by obesity and diabetes. And then we have the cardiovascular disease and the cancer mortalities. Autoimmunity is not necessarily a top killer, but it's also a major burden on our healthcare system. And all of these conditions are prevented or remediated by getting sufficient sun exposure. Vitamin D deficiency is highly linked with melanomas and also generally with skin cancers generally. So that's one area that's just like there's some cognitive dissonance there, because we know in the evolutionary landscape, the sun is the primary source of vitamin D in our bodies. It's not coming from the diet. There certainly weren't any supplements back in the day. So how do we square that? That's number one. So that's the first point. The second point would be, if the sun is causing skin cancer, then why is it, especially with melanomas, then why is it that indoor workers are more prone to getting melanomas than outdoor workers, and that pale people are more prone to getting skin cancers and specifically melanoma than people with tans? So those are some interesting kind of paradoxes that exist within the literature that tell me essentially that the sun isn't necessarily causal in any way in this story, that it's more likely to be another factor in our environment that we're not taking into account. And I think this largely points to the shift to an indoor lifestyle that we've experienced as a species over, the past few hundred years. If you're blocking UV light into your eyes, and again, I don't mean like stare at the sun, I just mean getting ambient light into your eyes, then you're not going to mount a melanin response that would help to protect you from sunburning, especially if you're pale. So that's a mistake that a lot of people make, is they'll wear sunglasses while they're sunning. And then on top of that, they'll also wear sunscreen, which both of those are blocking that POMC response, which is actually going to help you make that melanin to protect you, not only protect you actually from UV light, but also I think one of the primary roles of melanin is to allow you to harness the photonic energy of the sun. Because if we look at human photosynthesis, which there's papers on this in the literature, we can see that when sunlight strikes melanin, it causes melanin to split water molecules into 4 free electrons, molecular hydrogen, and molecular oxygen, all of which are important for powering mitochondrial energy production. When you're eating food, you're really eating for protons and electrons. And so we have a lot of different ways, 3 different ways in particular, that we can get electrons from our environment. As I just mentioned, the one is directly through exposing the melanin on our skin to sunlight. We also get free electrons from putting our bare feet on the earth via grounding and earthing. Only 1/3 of that equation is really food. And so I really see melanin as this really crucial mechanism by which we can harness free energy from the sun without putting a single bite of food in our mouths. What I will say, though, that's important is that if you're somebody that's prone to burning, and there's a lot of reasons why that might be that we should talk about, that it would be great for you to think about building a solar callus, which is what Dr. Jack Kruse calls it, which basically means that you build up your sun exposure over time. You don't go 0 to 100. You just build it up gradually day by day. You can also leverage things like red and infrared light, which helps to prevent burning of skin. So that could be something as simple as going out during sunrise, going out during sunset, which are completely enriched in red and infrared light and devoid in UV light, to get that red and infrared light therapy. Or if you have a device at home, you can use that as well. I personally recommend leveraging the sunrise and sunset because it's also important from a circadian perspective, and you're kind of getting, like, you're killing many birds with one stone.